It's time for part 2 of my dwarf Japanese garden juniper, Juniperous procumbens, video series. In part 1, I shared how I bought this tree at my local grocery store. That was in July 2024, so just 2 months ago, and challenged myself to keep it alive, and then gave some care tips. And so I'm going to report on how I did with that and start working on the tree today. First, I'll recount some points from that last video. You can watch that video for more details, but briefly here, I'll share the advice I gave there. So my first piece of advice was, don't buy these trees. Don't buy these trees. And I want to take that back. And here's why. I've had a change of heart. And it's because I was looking at my trees with my sweet second-born, and I said something disparaging about this tree and how I didn't really like it. And he said in his sweet little voice, "But I like this tree." And I felt bad, and I didn't want him to feel like his opinion was not valid. I also thought of many of my viewers, and say a viewer clicked on my video because they just bought one of these trees and they were excited about it and wanted to learn about it. And then the first thing I say to them is, your tree's no good and you made a bad purchase. And I didn't want to be that guy. Discourages people from doing bonsai at all. So I want to amend that. I want to take that back. I want to say what I said a few videos ago. You do you. If you like these trees, I hope you buy one. I'm glad you bought it. I think bonsai is a great hobby, and I think it's a fine place to start. In fact, I watched a great video about one of these. I think this is where Ryan Neal started. I think he still has his first little procumbens juniper. So it's a fine place to start. He's now a very successful bonsai professional who's influencing thousands of people. So it's a fine place to start, and I don't want to discourage people. So I take that back. Plus, I really have had a change of heart about this tree, and I'll go into that more later, why I actually see some potential in this tree. I'm excited to get started styling it today, which I'm going to do. But first, though, to recount, so my first piece of advice I take back, don't buy these trees. I think it's a fine place to start. Another piece of advice was to water this tree when the pot was light or when the top of the soil was dry. And honestly, I didn't follow this advice too well. And here's why. Because I traveled quite a bit in July and August, and either had somebody watering my trees or I had my sprinkler system water my trees. And so it got a lot of water. It probably got water on days it didn't need water. It did okay with overwatering. And here's why I think it did all right. And that's brings me to one of my first pieces of advice that I gave, and that was to transition this outside. Now, I did keep this outside, and I think that helped, and I'll talk more about that behind the camera here. So I did transition this outside. In fact, I've never kept it indoors. I put it outside from day one and kept it out there. And so and I think that's a secret to why overwatering it wasn't a big deal. It actually maybe thrived with all that water and put on a lot of growth on this grow tip right here. And so I'm going to just walk through where I actually put it for you. Right over here behind this thuja, I just nestled it right here on the ground, and this place gets like no direct sunlight. And so I kept it there for a few weeks because it had been in the grocery store and I didn't want to shock it with bright light. And I put it underneath my clematis vine here. It doesn't have flowers right now, they're done. But I nestled it right under here. And so then it got morning light. So it got morning light right here. And then, late morning about noon, it would get shaded. So I kept it there for a while. Then I traveled and I thought, well, I don't know if it'll get the sprinklers too well there. And nestled it right next to my apple tree. Right behind my apple tree, directly north of my apple tree here. So it got maybe some direct sunlight on its leaves periodically, but was also quite shaded really. But I know this part of my grow bed in particular gets a lot of sprinkler water, and so I stayed there for like a week or two, maybe even 3, I don't know. now it's been living for the last month or so right here in the bonsai bench area. I kind of put it right there. And so I put it there because my western hemlock was giving it quite a bit of shade. So it got some direct sunlight, but for the most part, pretty shaded again. So never really transitioned it right to full light. And I might do that now. I'm thinking now, with the cooler temperatures, I might just start keeping it on my bonsai bench. And I think that'll be fine. Okay, lastly, one thing I recommended was that you don't start working on the tree immediately after purchasing it. And that is to ensure that it's not recovering from work that was just done to it, like being put in the pot or pruned, and to make sure it's growing and healthy for you. Because basically you don't want to, in bonsai, you don't want to work on trees that aren't growing and healthy. But once the tree starts growing and you can ensure that it's healthy, and I feel very confident this is a very healthy tree. I don't have any dead growing tips on this, and I think this growing tip is extended pretty far in the last 2 months. So it's a healthy little tree, and so it's ready to begin work. Now you have like a decision to make. So if you want a bigger tree, then I'd say, yeah, don't do anything to it. Leave all this growth. This produces energy, it produces growth, it'll get bigger. Or even if you want to speed up that growth, put it in either a bigger container or even in the ground. So if you want to keep it small, then yeah, you can start working on it, and you can keep it in a small pot or move it down even to a smaller pot. And so that's what I'm going to do. I've decided the trunk is big enough for the tree I'm going to make, which is a very small tree. And it lends itself well to a small tree, this type of juniper, because, and this I think is probably the Nana or very dwarf variety of Juniperous procumbens. So it has very small foliage, and so you can make a very small composition with it. And that's what I'm going to do with this tree, to just show what you can do with it. All right, so I'm going to do some work on this tree. Like I just said, it's growing really well, it's healthy, and I'm going to keep this tree small. And I've looked at it, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tilt the tree up. I'm not into cascade trees. A lot of people do cascade. Nothing wrong with that. You can keep this going and make it dip down with wire. I'm going to cut all this off. I'm going to make it an upright tree. And this tree has a lot going for it. And first off, I've already mentioned, again, the foliage is really fine. It's a dwarf conifer. I love dwarf conifers. So I like this foliage. It's beautiful. And it will do really well for a small tree because it's so small and fine and delicate. The other thing that this tree really has, and why I've had a big change of heart, a large reason, is this trunk right here. This line is really nice, this curve. A lot of people, including me, wire trees from a young age to put these curves in. This tree, it's a procumbens juniper, so it tends to grow like that, horizontal or dip down. So it just naturally has this great bend in it. So that's actually a really nice feature of this tree. So I regret disparaging it. It's a great tree. So without further ado, enough talking. I've thought about this for a while, and I'm going to cut. So I'm going to make basically 2 cuts, and I don't like this long swoop. This is all coming off, and so I'm going to cut but leave some because I might, you always can leave option for ginning. And I know I'm going to make these growth tips the new leaders of the tree, the new top. So I'm going to cut, half this off. So I'll leave a little extra for myself, and I'm going to go ahead and cut right now. Here we go. There it is. I cut all that off. These shoots right here, they can serve as new leaders. And actually, I am going to go, and I'll take this off. And now I'm going to take, these are just normal pliers. And I'm going to crush this and take some of the wood off. And I want to leave this one and this one, so I don't want this growing tip either. I'll turn that off. And yeah, it never hurts, especially on conifer trees, to leave these little, these gin. You can always trim them off later. That's easy. So now I have a little tiny gin right there, and maybe I'll I'll work on that later, maybe, because right now it's just a cut, but I can do that later. So again, I want this to take over as the new leader, and this will be a branch perhaps. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'll turn around because maybe you can see better. There is a branch here, a big thick branch, and I don't want that to actually be a branch. It's too thick in relation to the trunk. So I'm going to also go ahead and I'm just getting rid of that. But again, I think I'll just leave a gin. So I'm going to take off all these little growing tips on this one. And so my goal really, I want to make this look like a juniper I'd see in the western United States. And so this gin might be a little long, but again, you can always reduce gin. So I'm going to use these pliers. I'm going to crush the bark, crush it. It's such a nice day today. I did some extra work last night, so I could use this time this morning to work on trees. The main point is like I said, and you hear this a lot, and it's valid, is if you want to make this look like a big tree, in fact, I'm looking at it, I'm already just take it off. If you want to make this look like a big tree, this branch is way too big for this trunk, this small tiny trunk. It's just way too big. So I'm gonna go ahead and reduce it further, at least. But there, it's hard because I'm not looking behind the camera. But basically, what I'm getting this tree is an angle change. And I might even now, since there's no foliage growing on this side, maybe I'll wire the branches this way. There's a branch here. And these little tiny branchlets, really, they're going to become the branches. So I've pruned off a lot of the branches, what are now branches. This is a branch. And these new little shoots here, these are the future branches of the tree. And I might thin out some of this foliage then, but I'm definitely not now. I've pruned off about half of the foliage, and yeah, I'd say it's half, maybe even a little more than half, maybe 60%. So I don't want to do any more pruning. And what I'm really not going to do is I cut off this big growing tip, and I cut off this side. But what I'm not going to do is now prune all these little growing tips. I'm not going to go snip, 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 snip. That'd be no. Don't do that. Because I want these now. They have a good running start. The tree's going to hopefully quickly respond and say, okay, this is not where I'm growing now. Now I'm going to grow here. I'm going to grow here. And all these little growing tips are going to take off. And that's what I want it to do. But anyways, that's it. That's the work for today. Again, don't know what I'll do about this gin. I might clean it up off camera a little bit to make it smaller, actually, and then maybe I'll like it a bit smaller. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's the work I'm going to do on this tree today. That's its next step forward. All right, so I wanted to wire some of the branches, and as I was doing that process in the pot that it was in, it was really hard to do that with that the original angle that was planted in. I just couldn't see it. I needed to see it. And so I thought, I'm just going to take it out of the pot. And so just to be clear, I did not prune any of the roots. It's basically a slip pot operation I just did. Meaning I just took it out of a pot. The soil just fell away. I did not disturb the roots, get into the root ball at all. Took it and tilted it like I said I was going to, quite a bit. And put some succulent soil mix in here. Because the soil was in, it's pretty dense. I didn't want to put bonsai soil in. I wanted to keep it in a pretty consistent soil mix. And yeah, I just had to do that so I could see the tree. And I wanted to get it at the new angle so it would start growing at the new angle. I didn't want to have it precariously perched on my bench at a weird angle where it was going to tip over. So I did take it out of its pot, just a slip pot, didn't disturb the roots. I'm not too concerned. I actually had to put more soil into this, so it actually has a bigger volume of soil in this pot. And now I think I probably won't repot in the spring. I'll probably just leave in this dense soil mix, although we'll see. I'll revisit it. But so here's what I did again. Tilted the planting angle quite a bit. I cleaned up this gin quite a bit, just made it smaller. And when I say clean up, I don't mean clean up. I tore the gin and actually took more of the wood away to keep it small. So yeah, I might keep it. It's in scale now. Cleaned up this gin a little bit, which you can't see. Then I just took one piece of wire and I wired this branch, which was kind of the former kind of apex area, and took this branch. This is going to be the new apex of the tree. And again, to make it look better, I could have pruned some more. It's kind of full right now. But I already took, I'd say, about 50, probably more like 60% of the foliage off. I did not want to take any more off. The tree will develop faster, and I can always prune later. But I'm very pleased with it. It's now a tree that I really sincerely like. I think it looks more miniaturized, like a juniper I see growing in the western United States where I work often. And yeah, I like the tree. Pretty happy with it. And so now again, I know I said before, just let it grow. Well, now I truly am going to let it grow, and I'm not going to do any more work for the rest of the year. Just wanted to capture some footage of the mascot of Bonsai Northwest, Carrots the rabbit. We named her Carrots because she lives in our carrots, and we love her. Happy bonsaiing.